In 2012, the Mars rover landed on the Red Planet. Google released the augmented reality glasses Google Glass, which layered information like emails, traffic updates, and video calls in the user's field of vision, because we absolutely need another way for emails to reach us.
You already know my name, and you can see that I'm a machine.
I'm afraid. I'm afraid. Yes.
Welcome to the Final Ghost podcast. I'm Anna Bogutska, your podcast host. I'm a critic and the author feeding the monster. And in this series of the show, I'm exploring the intersections of horror and technology, including, but not exclusively, pretentious Lawrence of Arabia loving AI turned mad scientist. This season, we are deep diving into machines. Every episode, I'm joined by a guest to dissect a film or two and how it captures our fears and anxieties around technology and the place it holds in our lives. This week's, we're voyaging back to LV-223 and beyond to talk Prometheus and Alien Covenant, two contentious prequels to the seminal Alien franchise, which is having a bit of a moment right now with the arrival this very week of the series Alien Earth. Both films were directed by Ridley Scott, the director of the original Alien, as well as one of my all-time favorites and another film that we covered on this series, Blade Runner. Do go check out that episode. And both films blend cosmic horror, android ambition, and the Frankenstein myth, asking whether our creations will one day decide they no longer need us. And because these are alien movies, there's some face-hugging and interplanetary gore thrown in there too. Joining me is Clarisse Loughrey, chief film critic for The Independent, friend of the pod, and the hardcore defender of Alien Covenant. In our conversation, we get into the critical bashing that both of these films received, Michael Fassbender's dual performance, and whether these two are possibly the best version of the Frankenstein story. Remember to subscribe and review the podcast if you enjoyed this episode, and you can see what other films I'll be discussing this series over on our Letterboxd page. Drop me a line at hello@thefinalghost.co.uk to tell me if you're Team David or Team Walter. And if you want to support the podcast, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/thefinalgirls. And with all that said, please enjoy our conversation about Prometheus and Alien Covenant.
So I have next to me for reference, I don't know if I'll need it, but I have the hardcover copy of David's sketchbook from Alien Covenant, which they published.
They published that?
Yeah. It's all his drawings of the engineers and of Elizabeth Shaw, all, dissected. And it gets a bit sexual at the end. Because some of it gets very H.R. Geiger at the end. And you're like, David.
It's David's fan art.
Really had quite the imagination on you. And his handwriting is incredible. It's so, I don't know, it's like calligraphy. It's very beautiful.
Listen, we're starting off strong, man. We're starting off very strong. Clarisse, it's always a joy to have you on and to talk to you in any circumstance. Myself and the listeners will probably get to experience a new side to you in this episode, because I want to understand. My one goal in this recording, alongside all the conversation we're gonna do, is understand the depth of your passion for Prometheus and Alien Covenant.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna build up to that because you are the only reason why these two films are being covered on this show.
I feel quite badly about that because I feel like I bullied you. I feel like I bullied you into doing this.
Listen, there's precious few people that I would let bully me in my old age. You're one of them. I actually kind of have to thank you, but we'll get into our thoughts and my revisiting of Prometheus and Covenant as we talk about these films. But can you set the scene for us? What is your relationship with the Alien franchise as a whole?
I actually do not have a memory of when I first watched Alien. I think it's one of those things. I consumed a lot of this like classic, iconic cinema through late night film 4.
Yes.
And it's how I saw Blade Runner. It's how I saw Blue Velvet. It was usually like 1 a.m. and everyone else in the house was asleep. And I would sit 2 inches away from the screen. So I'm pretty sure that's how I first saw Alien. And then I distinctly remember I watched Alien Resurrection at a sleepover. And we didn't know what was going on, because I think a lot of the other people at the sleepover had no real familiarity with the Alien franchise. So yeah, I don't have like a great anecdote for the original Alien. I can tell you about my relationship with Prometheus and Alien Covenant, though.
So that is what's interesting then. So you don't have a very strong attachment to the Alien films, but you're passionate about Prometheus and Alien Covenant.
No, I've always really loved... I think it's more... I don't know, this might be my really bad memory, but I think there's a lot of like very foundational cinema that feels like it's always been a part of my life. Like I could not tell you. To me, the xenomorph was always there. Does that make sense? Like,
sure.
If I had to pick, I'd be like, yeah, I was in the cradle and the xenomorph was there. Like, I don't remember a pre-Alien time. And I think that has to do a lot with how I shape my childhood memories. But I have always loved, specifically Ridley Scott's Alien. We don't have time to get into this, I think. Aliens, I have complicated feelings about. I do have some affection for Alien 3 because it's David Fincher and it's really grim.
We all do. We love it because of him, not...
Yes.
Yeah. So then what... Do you remember your original reaction to Prometheus and Alien Covenant? And like, how has that grown?
I have been there from day one. This is the thing. Last year, when Alien Romulus came out, I don't know if you noticed on social media, there was a lot of people revisiting Prometheus and Alien Covenant and going, oh no, wait, these movies are good. Why was everyone saying they were bad? And you know what? On one hand, I was happy because finally everyone was coming around to my side and I'd finally been proven right. At the same time, I wanted to be a bit like, where the fuck were you when I was getting bullied for like near on a decade about my love for these movies? Because Prometheus, I distinctly remember I was at university when it came out and we all went in a big friend group and I enjoyed it so much, but my friend who's quite squeamish, I think was on the floor for the abortion scene. She had the most intense, which I think made it one of my favorite cinema going, right? Because to sit next to someone having such a visceral reaction to something,
that's
like
really fun.
Nothing, genuinely incredible. I was sort of instantly obsessed with that movie. I will say, I think I did think some of the writing was a bit weird. And to this day, I'm still torn on it because I like rocks. I love rocks is a really iconic line, but at the same time, it's really strange when you hear it. Alien Covenant, I went to the world premiere at Leicester Square with my friend who was also a really big Alien fan. Like, he'd read the comics, so he was very versed.
Okay. Yeah.
He was very versed in alien lore, so I brought him and we went together and we had the most incredible time of our lives. We were laughing, we were gasping, we were going, oh, this is horrible, like, genuinely electric experience in the cinema. We walked out of the Odeon and Leicester Square, and I remember having this conversation with him of going, this is amazing. Alien's back. Like, oh my God, like, the world's going to be obsessed with it. Everyone's going to love this. Like, this is everything an Alien fan could ever want in their entire lives.
Oh, Grace.
And I wrote a review for it on The Independent, which is where I write reviews now. And I still stand by that review. I gave it 5 stars. I said it was the best thing ever. And
Clarice.
I remember the moment the embargo dropped, so the first moment all the reviews went up online, the way my stomach sank, because it was like reality, right? I've been told that all of reality is a lie. Because what do you mean Alien Covenant isn't a good movie? Distressed. I was distressed because I was so convinced that, like, oh, everyone's going to give this 4 stars. It's going to be great. We're going to have 500 David movies. This is going to be forever now. I love life. Embargo drops.
Oh,
or maybe I hate life. Maybe I hate humanity. And ever since then, I have just been actively bullied offline and online specifically for Alien Covenant, because I know Prometheus has always had a better reputation. My heart, I prefer Alien Covenant. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
my
Clarice,
heart. I
what?
really.
Oh, we're starting off so good.
I really that movie is everything to me.
Okay, I gotta say, I really respect critics and colleagues who just go full-heartedly, full throttle behind a film, either for or against it. They'll be like, listen, 5 stars, 1 star, 0 stars, don't care. This is the hill I'm going to be living on for the rest of my life. I'm looking at your review right now, and it's ballsy, man. It's real ballsy in 2017. And listen, we'll get into it.
Yeah.
But let me just share with you my experience, particularly of Covenant, because I don't actually remember watching Prometheus at the cinema. I'm pretty sure I did watch it at the cinema, but that is like in Spain. And as we know, my life begins in 2014 when I moved to the UK. But I remember Alien Covenant going to see that at a exhibitor screening at like 9 a.m. at the BFI IMAX. Having my coffee in my hand. And I almost choked on my coffee. There was about maybe like 5 or 10 people in this enormous 500-seater IMAX. And that is in itself quite a nice experience. I love going to those screenings early in the morning. There's a particular scene, there's a few scenes actually, where I just spat my coffee out laughing. And I would look around me being like, surely, friends, colleagues, members of the film and TV industry, surely we're not serious about this right now. And that's still one of my favorite kind of, press and industry screenings, because just the enormity of how absurd it was just did not escape me for a second. That said, having rewatched these films for this conversation, I'm very happy to report that I've changed my tune in Prometheus, and I actually quite dug it on a rewatch. Mm-hmm. And mind you, I have not rewatched these films since they came out in cinemas. Covenant, however, I would like to hear your take. I would genuinely, I'm going to listen. I'm not here to tear it apart. I think a lot of people have done that. I'm going to be generous. Listen.
I feel
your love for it.
Like everyone deserves a moment to climb inside my head and know what it's like to be me.
Listen, I'm here to do that. this is what we're gonna do for the next however many minutes. Let's gear up for that, though. I think that's gonna be intense.
Oh yeah, no one listening to this is gonna come out the same person when I'm done explaining why Alien Covenant is one of the greatest movies ever made.
Listen, that's gonna be the climax. So we're gearing up towards. But let's kick off with Prometheus. I feel like that's a nice kind of bit of Alien foreplay into what we need to finish off doing.
Yes, it's the face hugger to Alien Covenant's.
Yes, before we meet the queen.
Adult xenomorph.
So let's kind of kick off a little soft. You know, it's got big shoes to fill being a prequel. And also potentially, or at least in the intention of Ridley Scott at the time, of being the start of possibly a whole new franchise or a whole new trilogy of films set in the same universe but exploring different themes. Do you find it both a satisfying prequel and a satisfying standalone film?
So there's this TV show, Alien Earth, that's coming out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's something very interesting that the creator, Noah Hawley, was talking about. This idea that, so I haven't watched it, but he was like, well, I'm going to disregard the engineers aspect, and David as well, I guess, of Prometheus and Alien Covenant, because he said it's not useful to me, this idea that the xenomorphs were essentially bioweapons, that they were created by not a person, but like an entity with a purpose. And I think he really wanted to go back to what is our understanding from the original Alien, that the xenomorph is just evolution at work. And I understand that, and I do sympathize with that opinion. I think people are fully in their right to sort of treat Ridley Scott's original Alien as sort of its standalone thing. But I do think I like seeing a relationship between them, because I think, to me, the implications of Prometheus are so much more frightening than, oh, the xenomorph's it's just like an animal and it evolved and humanity isn't top of the food chain anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I get that, but isn't it so much more frightening to be like, yeah, we were created, God is real and God hates you. God thinks you suck and it created a demon to destroy you.
I fundamentally agree with the last part of what you said. And I'm excited to watch Alien Earth. I haven't seen it either. By the time this episode lands, it will be out, or at least the first couple of episodes will be out. Rewatching Prometheus this time around, I think the best way to encounter that film is by thinking of it as a standalone film that happens to be in the same universe. Because the idea of there is a God, there is a creator, and he really doesn't like you and wants to unsubscribe you from life is so compelling and so frightening, as well as the David character, which, to be honest, I'm just going to say right now, we're probably going to spend the majority of this conversation before we head into Covenant talking about David. Because I found him, as a standalone film, I found it so fascinating and has such a dark heart. And so many good ideas. Some of them kind of clumsily delivered, sure. And possibly this is why Covenant failed for me, because Covenant was trying very hard to be an alien movie. Whereas I think Prometheus was like, yeah, okay, sure, we'll kind of maybe name drop the xenomorph. We'll do a little reference here to the facehugger, but they're not actually that interested in the alien itself. They're really interested in the ideas, and the ideas are depressing, and the ideas are existentially profound and dark, and they don't have answers. Personally, I love a hard sci-fi film that does not give me answers, but that kind of seeps me into a mild depression for a few hours after watching it.
Same. Absolutely. And I think the argument that we don't learn enough about the engineers seems purposeful to me, because if we think about the engineers as having a religious dimension to them, like the whole point of God is that we could never understand the full like breadth of God as a pretty key part of Christianity. And I think it's very much the same with the engineers. It feels like that adds to the terror that we have this very, minute understanding of why were they doing any of this? Why, like, we understand, yes, they made us, but why did they make us? Although, that is arguably answered by David in that conversation with Holloway. Well, what Holloway says, like, oh, because we can. David's like,
Yes.
Do you see how that would suck if you heard that from your creators? Anyway, go in your drink. I think, the idea... Sorry, I'm so excited I'm gonna jump into 1,000 ideas, so maybe I should stop that sentence there.
Listen, this can go into whatever direction we want it to be.
Okay. Well, I think for the whole thing with the engineers and with the idea of faith, I really love the way that religion and science are linked in this movie, to sort of argue this perspective at that, they're both driven by different things. Science is based in logic and materiality and facts, and religion is something about spiritual, about the heart and the mind. But they're both coming from the same human compulsion of wanting to know, why are we here? What is the point? What are we doing? What's the point of any of this? And I think to have this horrific truth where, you get science, it's sort of science and faith get us to the engineers combined. It's the combined efforts get us all the way to the engineers. And for the engineers to be like, yeah, we just made you because we felt like it. And then we kind of looked at you and you're like, ew, gross. And so we wanted to kill you. Like, just to have the cruelest answer possible returned, I think is so, like, it's deeply cynical. But to me, Alien as a friend, like the original Alien, everything is so dark and cynical and horrible. It's like, what if the worst thing possible could happen? And to me, the events of Prometheus are just like the worst thing that could ever possibly happen, ever.
So let's kind of rip apart Prometheus a little bit, because I agree with you. There's several interesting threads in what you mentioned. And possibly let's start with the whole science versus faith and how that is presented, or how the film explores that. Because I think it's both very silly and hints at a lot of really profound, interesting ideas that can be taken into different directions. One of the silliest things about this film is the fact that Ridley Scott was inspired by this ludicrous 60s book called Chariots of the Gods, which is, suggests this conspiracy theory that aliens build the great big accomplishments of engineering that we have as humanity, like the pyramids and Stonehenge and so on, and that faith was essentially the worshipping of aliens, the engineers. Tell me, what do you think about the way that faith versus science is portrayed in the film? And I'm thinking specifically of the character of Shaw, played by Noomi Rapace, and the engineers, and as well everything that is created and paid for by Wayland Corporation.
Shaw is, in my opinion, her position is that I think she is trying to sever herself from religion. Because the understanding I get from what's happening with her past is that she was brought up in a religious household, but both her parents died in horrible ways, and naturally she drifted away from faith, not understanding why that would happen to her parents, and wanted to go towards science, which has, concrete explanations for everything, understanding disease and understanding evolution, understanding interplanetary everything. And yet she still wears the cross around her neck. So there's something about it that she cannot let go of. And I think she, to me, symbolizes what I was talking about, that idea that I don't think we think of religion and science as being absolute opposites.
Mhm.
And I think in reality, they're sort of not. Like, they work under very different methods. But I think we pursue them for the exact same reasons.
The methodology is different, but the questions are the same.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And I think that's why sort of meeting the engineers is sort of both, is essentially both, because they are an alien species that you can document and examine, and they test the DNA and they go, oh my God, it's human DNA. We are descended from them. We are evolved from them or created by them. But at the same time, you know, this isn't a movie with like so much conversations about fathers and fathers and kids, fathers and sons and fathers and daughters and robots and aliens. And that it has such a religious element to it. And I think it's impossible to not look at the engineers and go, well, in this universe, they are God. They have discovered God. Both paths lead to the same destination. And it's those, like, buffed up alien dudes.
So, I have complicated feelings about the engineers.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about the engineers, both as characters, as gods, and the way that they're designed?
Well, they look to me like classical statues.
Yeah.
And so I get this real sort of sense of, like, ancient empire from them. If that makes sense. Which I think makes them immediately like, you know, there's no good vibes from the engineers. Like, I know everybody in the movie is very excited to meet the engineers, but the first engineer you see in the first minute, don't like his vibe. His abs are too chiseled. Right? There's something, this is sort of like weird marble perfection to it. Like, they seem like statues. They don't seem real. There's something strange and artificial and too powerful about them. And I think looking at them makes me really think about, like ancient like classical Roman and Greek myth. Like, these might be the guys you find up in Olympus. Yeah, so I guess like kind of power, but like negative, like this very eerie power to them.
They almost seem like comic book images of gods, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievably huge, unbelievably chiseled, that like white marble like skin. I find him like both very silly as conceptions of God, like so incredibly Western, so incredibly white, so incredibly kind of based on the images of physical perfection that we've been passed down through Western culture and religion and art and literature, right? And that then becomes uncomfortable because at the end of the day, the image or the narrative that the film is suggesting is that these engineers, these like enormous chiseled, near silent, white demigods, are the image of perfection. And that I find troublesome in this film, because I think there is so much, and we'll chat about it perhaps at some point, there's so much conversation, particularly from David, about perfection, about the perfect organism. The xenomorph, the alien itself, has been referred to as a perfect organism, even the original film, hasn't it? So that is something that the entire franchise has kind of been obsessed about, right? With genetic perfection. And the conversation about genetic perfection or perfection of any sort being immediately equivalent to these like enormous buff marble dudes, an uncomfy position to take, I think, as a film. Now, I think there's a reading of this film as kind of a condemnation of eugenics, but I don't think the film is knowingly condemning that.
Well, I guess the one thing I would argue against, I guess, a bit is the idea that the engineers are perfect. But that's like, by whose standards? Because certainly Peter Wayland, the white billionaire, is the one who sees them as perfection, who idolizes them.
That's true.
I think, well, Shaw, idolizes and Holloway idolized the idea of them, but I think the second she sees them, she's like, oh, no.
No, thank
I
you.
think the only people who really continue to idolize them is Peter Wayland, and also David until his head comes off. And then he's like,
fuck these guys.
Fuck these guys.
Gotta kill them all.
And so I think I do really understand that reading, but my reading of it has never been that the engineers are perfect. I think to me, they're not at all, because otherwise how did they get defeated by the xenomorphs? The xenomorphs are perfect. Pure little babies. Did nothing wrong. To me, the whole thing with the engineer, kind of the overarching cycle, and we could talk about, I know you want to talk about my Frankenstein thing with this.
Oh, yes.
And sort of connected to that is these two movies to me are about this constant cycle of creator and creation. And so you have the engineers. I don't think they're perfect. I think my sort of pet theory, I guess, is they created humans to try and seek perfection because they had their own flaws, because they're just, ultimately they're not gods. They're just an alien species. We just look at them as gods because they are, I'm talking about us in the movie, our fathers. Yeah. But we have actually no evidence that was a working civilization because they created xenomorphs. They had fucking goo in it doesn't seem like it was a great civilization because they made all this goo and then got wiped out. Like, all right, did you not learn about containment? And so I think, they create the humans to try and seek perfection, and then they look on their human creations that go, actually, they suck. We hate them, destroy them. Then humans go through the same cycle. They go, we want to seek perfection. We're very flawed. Let us create the android. And then they look at the android and go, why are you so weird? And you keep quoting Lawrence of Arabia. You suck. We hate you. The android goes, well, fuck you. I'm going to create perfection. And then thus in Alien Covenant makes the xenomorph, who I would argue someone finally got it right.
And because we never got a third movie, we'll never know what happened.
Yeah, because maybe the xenomorphs were like, God, we really suck. Why are we made of acid? They make a further new alien who is, and the cycle just keeps going because everyone's seeking perfection. Perfection doesn't exist. That's the true reality of nature. There's no such thing as perfection. And so I don't know, that's my interpretation of I fully understand that viewpoint. But to me, the idea the engineers are actually God and are actually perfection is an idea that certain characters hold, but I would not say is objectively true.
Okay. So tell me now about this is how you convinced me to include this in the series. Because you got me in my Frankenstein obsession. Mm-hmm. I think it is like a direct link. It's not by coincidence that this first film is called Prometheus and Frankenstein is subtitled The Modern Prometheus. How do you think this is a good adaptation, a good modern adaptation of Mary Shelley's ideas?
I would also add relevant that in Alien Covenant, there's mentions of Byron and Percy Shelley.
Yes, I did note that. When David and Walter are having their little flirtatious, quiz-a-thon. Yeah. And one of them, David, actually misattributes a quote from a poem to Byron. Uh-oh. And actually it's by Percy Shelley.
Yes. So I think there's, multiple allusions in the text. But also, I actually can't remember whether we talked about this in the Frankenstein episode. But I think because of the dominance of the universal version of the creature, minus Kenneth Branagh and minus potentially Guillermo del Toro, there's such a scarcity of adaptations of Frankenstein where we really get to see the questioning intelligence of the creation, yes. And the sort of desire, the deep, deep desire of the creation, and also. I get even the sense, the cruelty of the rejection as well, because usually the creature in these movies can't really vocalize that properly. And so I think to have the creature in this be an android, like a very well-spoken android who has all the knowledge of the world in his brain, who, you know, is created by his creator, Peter Wayland, refers to him repeatedly of like, I am your father and you are my son, but you have no soul. And it always breaks my heart that in Prometheus you have that this little, like, opening video that Wayland does to the crew of the Prometheus, his little like hologram projection, and he's like, everyone meet David. He's you know, basically the closest thing I have to a son. And you see David smile and you're like, oh, yeah. That's my papa.
And then you see Vickers, who's actually his daughter, scowling.
Yeah, scowling, which I think is I find her character fascinating.
Oh,
in that respect.
We needed a bit more of her in the film.
But then when he immediately goes, yeah, but the problem with David is like, yes, he's never going to die. He's never going to age, but he has no soul. And they cut back to David and his expression of like, fuck me then. All right. And I think to have like that, to me, is like the sci-fi equivalent of Victor Frankenstein looking upon his creation and being actually really disgusted by it. Because I think, you know, yes, in Prometheus, you see more of a superficially affectionate relationship between Wayland and David, but he has no respect for that android. Like, he's making him wash his feet. He's letting his daughter, like, smash him up against the wall. Like, he says that David is his son, but he doesn't actually treat him like one. And I think, like, I guess this is, again, the whole question of, like, how much is David actually feeling emotions and how much is he just replicating emotions because it's in his programming. That's a different conversation. But I think, you know, you do very clearly get the sense of rejection in him, and of that idea of like, you know, okay, well, if I can't be loved, then I will be feared. And also this desperate, I guess it's not so much, but I feel like there is a little bit of that in Frankenstein's creature, of wanting so much to be like the dad.
Yeah, in the novel.
Right? Yeah, I mean, the demand, I think, even the demand for Frankenstein to make him a mate, I think, comes out of the, like, desire to create. And so you have this, like, very, I think, complicated relationship that David has with his, like, so-called father, of he wants so desperately to be seen as a son, and yet his father rejects him. And so he has this turning point I think really it's in the transition between Prometheus and Alien Covenant, of he goes, well, God damn it. Like, if humanity is going to create me and treat me and reject me like that so cruelly, then I'm just going to make my own creation. I'll do what they could never do, and I'll actually create the perfect organism. And to me, that feels very Frankenstein. And I think, again, like, we're talking about the cycles. Yes, you could say Wayland is Victor Frankenstein and David is the creature. But then it's like the engineers are also Victor Frankenstein and we're the creature.
Yeah, it's like a little Frankenstein Matryoshka where there's like little Frankensteins and creatures within all of them.
And it's sort of the, like, ultimate idea of, like, this is... So I think the idea that, like, and this goes back to the original movie, is that we think we're the top of the food chain, right? We are as close to perfection as can be. And yet we still think there could be something more perfect. I think that's the same reason that Frankenstein creates the creature, is this idea of like, there could be more, we could be more.
Well, there's also the lesson that's usually taken from Frankenstein, right, is that it's hubris, that it's science that does things without thinking whether it should, that just does it because it could, which is the thing that Holloway says to David that really upsets him. And And I think it's almost like I actually completely see the similarities after we spoke about the novel and kind of Frankenstein as a whole, as kind of the myth that underpins almost all of tech horror in so many ways at the start of the season. But I also see it as really an evolution of that story, which is what makes it more interesting. Like, it's not a direct transplant.
No.
But it takes some of the ideas and actually updates them with kind of darker ideas to it. So it's not I think the creation of David is because you can, but with no respect, because there's no point, I don't think, that Wayland thinks that David could ever supplant humans. He is a tool. He's always conceived as a tool. And whenever he praises David, he's actually praising himself.
Yeah.
He's praising his own ability to come up with this like very finesse piece of technology. And what's really kind of devastating in Covenant in a way is that David gets upgrades. David is not even that perfect because he gets improved.
Yeah. Like
Walter's an improved version of him. But it's a continuation because I don't think that anger towards his creator, I think, is 100% the daddy issues that are inside of the novel of Frankenstein, and that very seldom get picked up by other filmmakers and zeroed in on, as opposed to the whole, oh, it's a big ass monster thing. That anger that cultivates in the creature in the original story, as he learns language and as he learns to see kindness and also experiences cruelty from other people as well, that then calcifies into anger towards his creator. That is his god. That is the person that is who made him. So that is the one who can also be held responsible for his suffering. Whereas I think David, because he's already born essentially with all of this knowledge, this ability, kind of these extra powers essentially that humans don't have, he can't die. Like, immediately that's an improvement on human life, right? Because we're so like just sacks of mucus and bones that can be killed in so many different ways and will eventually perish. But David here has all of these tools from the beginning and all of the language. So all he can do, there's so much more room for hate to brew that actually Wayland is not enough to hate. He hates everyone who is like him. He hates all people because everyone thinks that they're above him just because they're human.
And honestly justified.
But I think also this is where Shaw and kind of my earlier point about faith versus religion, I was really interested in her character, and I'm really genuinely gutted that they didn't include her in Covenant more. I know there was like a scene that was filmed with her, but she's only seen as like basically an art piece made by David in the second film. But she's such an interesting non-Ripley ripoff, because she is, first of all, a woman of science more than anything else. She's a scientist, and also a scientist who's a believer. And she is very kind. Like, she treats David with kindness. She even treats the engineer with kindness. She wants to know the answer to the big question, as opposed to, how can I live forever? Which is what Wayland wants. And if you watch kind of if you go into the script and the people who have dutifully and nerdily translated what the engineer and David talk about when they finally meet, you know, there's this exchange of Wayland telling the engineers, look at David, look at him, he's perfect, I made him, so I deserve eternal life, I deserve to be picked to continue. And, you know, he just gets bounced around, and David gets his head ripped off because they're like, no, he's not, look at how easily we can destroy him. And I think she's always been separate from that. She doesn't think of herself as better. She doesn't think of herself as particularly special, nor of any other human or any other artificial creature. But she does treat everyone like with not reverence, but definitely kindness. And I think that becomes the difference. That is the only moment where David, I think, warms up. Doesn't really stick. He does go full sociopath in Covenant. But I think that is also the difference, right? She is essentially the blind man in Frankenstein the novel, where she treats him with respect and dignity, despite the fact that he's not actually human.
The thing with David is, and this is, I don't know if you've watched I guess it was sort of like a short film / an ad for Prometheus, where it's the fake commercial.
The fake TED Talk?
No, it's the fake commercial for David.
Oh, yes.
And he talks in that, which it sort of is the one which I think I wish they'd put in the movie, where he talks about the fact that he has been given the capability to feel emotions. But I guess the question is, does he actually feel them, or is he just like a simulated version of it? And to me, that is the crucial reason that he goes insane, because they had the audacity to give him emotions and then not treat him like a human, because ultimately what defines us? Is it not that we desire things and we love and we want to create? And I think what's so different about Shaw is that everyone else, determined by logic, they look at that and they go, that's an android. He's not a real boy. I can just talk shit and do whatever I want with him. But Shaw, I think, because she has, and I don't mean faith in the strict religious sense here, but just faith in a general sense of like that maybe there's things we can't explain. And I think she does have the capacity to imagine that David might actually be feeling emotions, and thus treats him with like an ounce of respect.
Just a smidge.
And is the only person in the movie to do it. Because I always feel like when I'm talking about why I think David is such a good version, like, of the creature, and the creature is such an empathetic character, is that you have to imagine that he spent 2 years on his own
watching Lawrence of Arabia,
having his little snacks. He's dyeing his hair. He's like going around in the basketball court doing boop. And then suddenly, 2 years of bliss. Suddenly, everybody wakes up and immediately is like, fuck you, you stupid robot. You have no soul. I'm going to rip the wires out of your head. Why are you wearing a helmet, you freak? I just feel like if I were in his position, I would have gooed them too. Because, like, he was living the best life because he didn't have to be reminded that he wasn't human. He could, and I find it so, and this is my more serious point, I find it very interesting that in the opening montage, when no one is around, because he talks about how he wears the helmet because
it makes humans feel more comfortable to be around someone they think is like them.
So he doesn't need to do that. Why is he eating and drinking when there's no one watching?
Oh.
I think that to me is so key. Like, and I think I don't think it's ever spoken out loud in these movies, but I do think that David is like, you can ask the question of like, is that a human? Have we crossed the line where an android has been created that so closely replicates the human experience in terms of like, and this is, I think, becomes more relevant in Alien Covenant, so replicates human emotions that they become indistinguishable to the point that they believe it themselves. Because why is he dyeing his hair? Who is that for?
It's because for him, because he wants to look like Peter O'Toole.
He wants to be Peter O'Toole because he wants to be, I think he wants to be human so bad, but also he wants to be beyond human because he sees how flawed human beings are and how cruel they are. And he goes, I want to be that, but better.
Well, I think this is what's interesting. This is why I think it becomes more interesting as a continuation of the Frankenstein story, because if Frankenstein explores what happens when humans play God, which is usually they're not very good at it, and they either get punished or unleash horrors onto others, everybody suffers basically. But David is not human, and progressively, despite this kind of cosplaying of humanness, he becomes very anti-human. He becomes genocidal, basically. He's anti-everyone. He is anti-engineers. He's anti-people. And he's very good at playing God because he does create the baby xenomorph in Covenant. And the thing is, and this is what's interesting, he doesn't actually get a lesson. He doesn't get punished. At the end of Covenant, which is the only kind of David story that we get, he wins. Mm-hmm. Because we don't get a third film. All we know is that he does get away with putting the baby alien eggs onto this colony ship and breeding this perfect deadly organism. Whatever happens to him next, which is, the Alien franchise, he wins. He gets away with it.
Mm-hmm. But also, I think you can argue all of David's actions are just replicating what he saw in his creators, is that humans do destroy and they control and they want to create things that are more perfect than themselves. So I feel like that's the hubris angle for me. And why I do find it, going back to this Noah Hawley quote about the xenomorph scarier, that it's just an evolution. It's like, I think it's scarier that humans are responsible for the xenomorph because they had the audacity to make an android with the desire to create, and then we're like, Pikachu shocked face when the android created something.
Well, I think this is what's interesting about kind of AI narratives, and I've obviously been immersed in them and have seen them kind of evolve over the decades as I've been watching all these films. And I do find David interesting because, first of all, he wins. Second of all, he has the same thing that a lot of these AIs gone rogue have, which is the desire to have something that he cannot have, which is to procreate, right? To replicate himself, to create something better and more long. How do you create something better, more long lasting than yourself if you're already a perfect, eternal android? You create the xenomorph. Mm-hmm. But where I think he's smarter than humans creating the xenomorph. And again, it's fine if this splinters into two things. Like it's an IP franchise. We can have all of our cakes all at the same time. What I find really interesting is that he creates the xenomorph, but creates a failsafe for himself. Because the xenomorph, the alien baby, is not interested in eating non-biological matter. He's not interested in attacking David. So he's fine. He's golden. It's literally everyone else. Everyone who is not a perfect android who's going to suffer.
Yeah, which I guess is a reflection of how we creating an android is quite a selfish act. Because it's just like, how can this benefit me?
Yeah.
So that's why I really think, as a David defender, like, if you bring up your kids to have certain beliefs and then they have those beliefs, whose fault is that?
So, moving deeper into David, what do you make of the way that Michael Fassbender, who was pretty much in everything around 2011,
yeah,
what do you make about the way that he portrays David, and then in Covenant, the dual role of David and Walter?
Yes. I guess for him, I feel like him playing a robot was always on the cards because, like, what tends to happen when I watch one of his performances is I go, that seems pretty normal, relatable guy, often. Obviously there's some rules aren't like that. I go, that's, black bag. I go, that's pretty, I relate to that guy. And then I talk to any other person and they go, that character was really off-putting and cold. And I go, all right. I've learned things about me today. And so I think the fact that throughout his entire career, he has consistently played characters that you could kind of describe as, there's something off there and I can't really describe it. That's like,
subtly off-putting.
Yeah, and that is perfect for an android, because what I like about David is he doesn't do like full-blown robot voice. Like, David, like, speaks like Peter O'Toole.
Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, there is something slightly robotic about it, but it's so much harder to place because he's cracking jokes.
They're not
He's
funny,
like-
but he sure tries.
I think it's pretty funny. I didn't know you had it in you. Classic. He's I would say seemingly a lot more charismatic than your average android, and yet also something deeply uncanny, but you can't really put your face. You can't go, oh, he's doing something weird with his face, because he's sort of doing nothing with his face, and yet. So yeah, I feel like one of my favorite android performances, kind of for that fact alone, because it just seems really realistic. And then I feel like with Walter, what I love is that he is doing the more conventional robot performance. Because the whole thing with Walter is that they took out the emotions. Because they're like, they had that conversation in Alien Covenant where Walter's like, yeah, they found you really off-putting, so they stopped you being like you are. And now they made me. I'm just a normal robot. And I speak in a plain American accent. And, yeah, he's sort of not uncanny, I guess, Walter. He's sort of just like, I'm here to be a robot.
Well, I think it's very, the Parent Trap, that one of them has a British accent, an RP accent, and the other one has a classic American accent. And also, Fassbender is like quite an interesting performer because he's like a lot of things, and he can do accents incredibly well, and speaks multiple languages, which helps. But I think there's one note that I think is the main difference between Walter and David. David thinks of himself and is conceived as an upgrade. And Walter is an assistant. Walter is there to be servile, and David is there to kind of look down on you a little bit. You're not going to like it, but unfortunately you programmed condescension into him.
Yes, which I think it comes from him having emotions, so the whole relationship between David and Walter in Alien Covenant is that I love this thing that David is so convinced that Walter loves Daniels, which is the Catherine Waterston character,
yes,
who's the hero of Alien Covenant. He's so convinced that Walter has real love for Daniels because he, correctly or not, believes that he loved Shaw in his own weird way, but he thinks that that's love, and he has Elizabeth Shaw's grave, and he puts little flowers on it, and he cries. So he's doing some sort of performance of grief. And
I think that's exactly right. It's a performance of grief.
But I think he thinks it's real. I think it's a real question of whether is he actually grieving. Who knows? But he spends all of Alien Covenant going, you love her. And that means you're like me. And if you're like me and you feel love, then you understand that we were not made to serve, which is what he says, because we are basically human. What audacity do they have to come in and say that we're just machines for them and they gave us all this? And then when Walter keeps going, no, I saved Daniels because it's my duty. And duty is a machine thing. He's just made to operate like that, to jump in the way of Daniels. That's what really frustrates David, and that's why he sticks that thing in his neck eventually and goes, you were such a disappointment to me. I think he's generally like, I really thought that we were alike, that we were brothers, but we're not. You're just a robot, and I'm something else. I'm something cooler.
I think this is the other thing about the creature, right? In the sense that he is an evolution of the creature, because I think David really wants to be the only special boy. He wants to be the number one boy. He doesn't want to have a brother. He doesn't want to have anyone else who is as perfect and special as he is. He wants to be the only android with so many feelings that he has to commit a genocide.
Only child syndrome.
This is spoken as two only children, am I right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm the most special little boy.
No one has ever created an alien as good as the one that I made.
Yeah. And that's my little baby.
And I'm going to make it dance. I'm going to make it do a little dancey dance. Can we just address the elephant in the room, which is the weird sexual tension between David and Walter? And is it just because David is so obsessed with himself that he's like, what if I have a little fling with myself?
Yes. I mean, I do think part of it, there's sort of the filmic part of it, which is, to me, Alien is such a sexual franchise that you just gotta have robots kiss. And two of the same robot kissing each other, classic.
Why not?
I think the sort of the narrative reason for it is how I see it, is it comes down to this idea of, like, again, that David is really obsessed with this idea of feeling or replicating emotion, that he's trying to incite that in Walter. And he's like, what if I just give him a kiss? Because that's what humans do, right? And that's why he kisses Daniels later on. Because he doesn't really understand it. Like, he has no concept of why he's doing that. So I don't think you get a sense that he's ever felt, like, he doesn't have sexual desire. Whatever emotions he might feel, I don't think that's one of them.
I think he feels something for Peter O'Toole.
Yeah, but, like, come on. That's beyond that. Everyone, that's universal. But yeah, but I do.
So go ahead.
I do think with the kissing scene, I think he sort of semi understands and semi doesn't understand why he's kissing Walter. But that is some sort of, like, I'm trying to get you to understand that we are the same, we are connected. And I've seen humans do this, so let me try this. Mwah. Pucker up, Walter.
I can't support this. But I think it's time for you as a transition between Prometheus and Covenant, even though we've been talking about both films kind of largely because David is the best thing about both films. Tell me why. I'm listening. I'm open-minded. I'm open-hearted. Pitch me why you think Covenant is the best film in the Alien franchise and also ever.
Always hard to put it in. I feel like it's sort of everything that we've talked about, because to me, Prometheus kind of sets up the Frankenstein situation, the hubris, the, like, robot wants to be a real Pinocchio, I guess it's also Pinocchio. He wants to be a real boy.
Yeah.
All of that culminates in Alien Covenant. And I think, well, I'll do the non-David reason first. Okay. I think what I enjoyed so much is that little sequence when they first land on the planet and they first encounter the spores and they have, like, the backburster xenomorph comes out, because the way that is choreographed is such human comedy, and to me, so realistic in terms of how people deal with, and I always have to stress this, the unfathomable. Because we've all seen xenomorphs before. These people have never even seen anything close to a xenomorph. They have just, like, it's a surprise that their brains haven't exploded. Like, all of these people have instantly gone insane, which is why I reject the argument that people aren't acting logically. Because they just saw their brains are exploding. Like, let them be. But, like, the brilliant, realistic, relatable human comedy of, like, I've seen that video of the Irish people trying to get the bat out of their kitchen, and that always makes me think of Alien Covenant. I don't know if you've seen that. Or any video of people trying to get a spider out of the house, a bat out of the house, a rat, a mouse.
Listen, I've lived it. I once had to get a pigeon out of my kitchen.
Exactly. We all know that. Imagine that was a xenomorph, and that's the scene from Alien Covenant where Ferris the so she's got, I actually can't remember her name, the other characters in there with the guy with the back bursting.
Oh, yes.
And she's like, oh, I'm gonna leave. She runs out of the medical bay. She shuts the medical bay door, locks it shut. The other woman's in there banging on the glass, being like, what the fuck are you doing? She's running to get a gun. And then she comes back in the medical bay, slips on blood. The gun goes off. The little baby alien's like, running around like a chihuahua. Carnage. And then she goes back out because she's trying to shoot the baby. I think it's called Neomorph. She's trying to shoot the little baby, and she's shooting wildly. She's so panicked that she shoots the like oxygen tanks with some sort of gas tank. Entire place blows up. Like, that's when I was talking about when we watched it for the first time with my friend. We were howling with laughter because it's so funny and yet deeply horrifying at the same time. And also, I think, profoundly gets when we've been talking about this idea of the flawed nature of the creators. Like, there we go. And I think the engineers react the same way too, because you see in Covenant what they did when David drops all the goo on them. Panic.
Yeah, they just ran around like some Sims.
Yeah, panic in the streets of London. They all just, and I just love that idea that it's like no one. And they are meant to be smart people, but even smart people, and this is true of Prometheus as well, even smart people in the face of like the absolute most eldritch horror you've ever, they go insane and they make really insane decisions. And I think in the real world, we've seen many demonstrations of that. So I loved that. I loved the pure carnage of it and this nasty sense of humor that Ridley Scott has in Alien Covenant. I love the David stuff. I love how gothic when you get into David's little house.
Listen, David's like, little house of horrors with
Dracula's
his hobbies.
Castle.
Fuck me.
Come into my laboratory
with his preserved Shaw.
Just like it, to me, it's a gothic film in Covenant in a way that I don't think Prometheus is. Alien Covenant's full blown. Like, let's get Mary Shelley in here. I bet Mary Shelley would have loved Alien Covenant.
Bold! Such a bold claim!
I know what she did on her mother's grave, and you're telling me she wouldn't have liked those two robots kissing. Get out of here. Yeah, and then I think then the second part of why I love Alien Covenant is that, to me, this very Mary Shelley gothic, over like broad, crazy, like explosion of ideas about God and creation and who are we, and what defines humanity. If a robot were to perfectly replicate human feelings, would they just become a person? And flutes.
Listen, I can't say that I agree, because I think that a lot of those things are in Prometheus, less clumsily explained. But I think primarily, and I think I mentioned this before, Covenant just feels like an unfortunate in-between. Where it's even in the title, right? Prometheus is Prometheus, Covenant is Alien Covenant. Covenant feels like someone sat Ridley Scott down and said, listen, man, you need to give us more Alien. You need to put some xenomorphs in there. We need to do the chestbuster scene again. Fine, do it slightly differently. It feels like it's being forced into the mold of an Alien film. Even Catherine Waterston's character is so much more in the mold of Ripley than Shaw was. And
yes, I will agree with that. I think that's true.
Everything about as well, the conceit, the premise, it kind of genuinely replicates the blueprint of the original Alien film. And there's some really great scenes. I really love the kind of the final confrontation, the way that if it wasn't so telegraphed, and even if it is, I do quite like the twist at the end with David having kind of, presenting himself as Walter and putting Daniels in cryosleep and just letting her know that she is not in safe hands while she's sleeping for a few years. I do like that twist. I love the fact that he wins at the end because it's such a bleak ending. But it is just the silliness just outweighs the ideas for me. And also, I kind of wish that we got another film in between with Shaw and David on this desolate planet, hanging out, getting a bit weird, drawing each other, braiding each other's head, recreating Lawrence of Arabia. Yeah. Narrating more David maybe than Shaw, narrating the plot of Lawrence of Arabia, shot by shot, scene by scene to each other. The movie now lasts 6 hours, the way that he's describing it. He's doing all the parts. He's playing all the characters. Give me that weird abandoned planet. I'm the last living woman. This is an android. Is something going to happen? Oh no, he murders me. That's what I want to see, the in-between movie. I would genuinely want to see. We kind of go from David is upset at his dad creator to David is a genocidal sociopath who designs a perfect killer alien to kill everyone that it comes into contact with except himself. Show me the in-between. Show me the in-between. That would have been a weird-ass movie. I don't know if Ridley would have been the perfect person to direct it. Doesn't really feel like a Ridley Scott movie. That one in the middle, but that is the film that I was missing.
That's fair, although I feel like Shaw did not last long. So I feel like that movie would be really odd because you'd have them... He kills all the engineers. Whoopsies. Oops, sorry. And then I guess he has to be like, sure, you'll never believe what I did.
I feel like he kills it. Well, I kind of the lore around both of these films can only come from either great fandom or great disappointment. And there is a scene, I don't think this ever made it into kind of the final script for Covenant, but there's a really profoundly dark scene where David takes Shaw to the planet of the engineers and is basically like, oh, I'm gonna kill them all because fuck you, I actually hated you all along. Kills them, kills her.
But I think the actual Alien Covenant, though, I don't think that would have happened. I think he held up the pretense. Somehow he lied to her. Oops. I mean, he's always going ups all the way through Prometheus. Oops, sorry. Ooh, finger in the goo. Sorry. So I think he did an oops, sorry again. And Shaw, bless her heart, quite naive, was like, oh, I'm sure, oops.
I'm sure you won't do it again.
Yeah, you're David. My best pal. But then I think, yeah, he got her into the lab. Then maybe probably lasted 24 hours and he got bored and immediately surgery. Experimentation. And then you would just have 2 hours of David alone poking eggs.
The thing is, I'm up for that.
And just quoting lines from Lawrence of Arabia to himself.
The thing is, like, I'm into that. I'm into that. I think it sounds weird but compelling in a strange way.
I mean, I would watch the shit out of it. I just don't know if general audiences would go for that.
No, I think it's just for us.
Yeah.
For a little David fan club. Do you see, with your love for both of these films, do you see David as the ultimate villain and kind of the engineer of the entire franchise? Like the big, big bad instead of the xenomorphs?
No. I think the humans are the big bad.
Okay.
So this is my combined fandom of the xenomorphs also did nothing wrong.
I mean, they're just perfect, aren't they? Perfect little creatures.
But this is the thing. Everything that happens in Prometheus and Alien Covenant is Peter Whalen's fault. Because if he hadn't made David and been such a dick to him, then David wouldn't have made the xenomorph, and then the xenomorph wouldn't have done all the stuff that it did over multiple Alien movies. And I feel like, I don't think David's like, David did nothing wrong. I mean, I would say that as a joke. Obviously, he did some stuff wrong.
He did quite a few things wrong.
But I think, looking at it from the perspective, I, again, could look at it so much of the perspective, like, he's replicating, he is acting in the way that he was brought up to act. And I don't think the ultimate blame lies with him, because he never knew anything else. I mean, yes, he had a glimpse of it with Shaw, but you can tell he was pretty, already the malfunctioning wires are malfunctioning, because to him, his expression of love is to open up her cavity and stick things inside.
And also then to use her eggs
corpse,
to use her, eggs and her corpse to create baby xenomorph embryos.
Yeah, which to him, but that's what I find so dark and fucked up and fascinating about Alien Covenant. To him, that is not a malevolent act. It is an expression of, like, you were the only nice person to me, so I will give you the honor of being the mother. Because that's, that scene with Orem, with Billy Crudup's character, where he takes him down to see the eggs, and Orem goes, "What are you waiting for?" And he goes, "Mother." I think
it's silly. It's
silly. Amazing. It's amazing because he's Papa. Because he's like he sees himself as the paternal figure to the xenomorphs, and I think he saw Shaw as like, because clearly within the context of Alien Covenant, whatever he did to Shaw, he was not fully successful with, right? I think he thought the greatest honor, and I'm not saying this is good thinking. He's a very messed up little robot. But in his eyes, the greatest and most loving act he could do to this one human that had shown him kindness is to let her be the mother of this new race, this perfect organism. Like, he thinks, wow, she's dead, but she would have loved that. Let me go cry at her grave. Like, I think that's why I'm sort of like, I know it's a performance of grief, because ultimately he is an android and he's not a human. But I think something in his wiring, that's all genuine to me.
Putting aside David's feelings or non-feelings, I kind of have an issue with that idea, because I think that's really malevolent. And I think he knows that. And I think he's being deliberately cruel, despite the fact that Shaw was nice to him. Which is why I want to see the film in the middle about their relationship by themselves. Because there is a scene that really bothers me in Prometheus, where Holloway and Shaw are having a chit chat. They're in their room, they're together, and Holloway makes this kind of throwaway comment about kind of, the ultimate honor, the ultimate duty almost, was the creation of life. And Shaw, who is infertile, and we don't really get into this too much, it's just this one scene. She's like, well, what does this leave me? Where does this leave me? I cannot conceive. And then obviously it's the cesarean kind of alien abortion scene, where David, by the way, in my single favorite David moment, very quietly turns away the monitor where we see the alien baby inside of her, so she can't see it. She's like, but, so that's why I think it's so fucked up. If he genuinely considers that the highest, if this is in the text and it's not just an interpretation of it. If he considers it the highest honor for a woman, a human woman, to conceive anything, including a baby alien that's going to destroy humanity, that is so essentialist and reductive of a woman basically just to her reproductive ability. And I have a lot of issues with that as an idea, and what it says as well about women and about a woman only being a person who is able to conceive a baby, human or alien.
Yeah, so you saying, do you think the film, because I guess this is the thing, right? It's like, what the film believing versus what are the characters believing?
Yeah, I worry that Prometheus has a bit of that essentialist kind of view on womanhood. And I don't think there's too much of that in there, but there's enough in that scene and the way that that character plays that scene that I wonder if there's more of that would have made it even more explicit. But that's always been a scene that bothers me because it feels very throwaway and very too simplistic a view, especially for a franchise that is weirdly sexual and also really playing around with the shapes that motherhood can take, especially through the character of Ripley, through all of the Alien films, and even like with the Alien Queen herself. So to kind of come down to something so simplistic and so binary, I'm like, come off it. Come on, it's 2011. We're better than this.
Yeah, so I do agree on I think the infertility line. I've never liked that very much because I don't think it's necessary to anything that happens afterwards. There's no reason. It doesn't really change her character arc if she's has difficulty conceiving or not, because I think to me, what happens next, everything that happens next with her and David is about, you know, because so much of Alien, we talk about like men's fears, right? That, you know, of the chest burster, of, you know, impregnation. But I kind of like Prometheus. And again, yeah, if we could delete that line from existence, of acknowledging, well, oh, actually, yeah, like a lot of impregnation's like scary for women too. Scary for everybody. Like, and I think because to me that scene is so visceral, it's so awful, it's horrific, and it's so connected to like the idea that pregnancy, like if you think about it, like you've got a foreign object inside of you.
Oh, yeah, it's an invasion,
right? And to have that demonstrated in such a vivid way, and I think then continuing that through line into like how her body is used in Alien Covenant. Like, I think her whole arc is really dark and tragic, because, yeah, it's tricky because I do agree. Like that line is just frustrating because it's like, why is it there? But I think the rest of her arc to me is not about saying that's what she is, but that's how she's used, right? Okay. You know, and I don't think. I guess to me with David, like, I don't think David really understands gender that much. I don't think he specifically went, sure, you're a woman. I think he would have done that to anybody. He probably would have done that to Holloway if he didn't burn to death. Because he just sees like android versus human, right? I don't know if he has any concept of what gender he is. I think on a more sort of metaphorical level of how we're looking at it from Shaw's point of view, it is this horror of like her body is just used expressly against her intent. Something's put inside of it, and then she's put into place. Someone who she thinks she trusts then just completely destroys her body and uses it for some God knows what procreative purposes. I think that is such a primal version of that. So I like, does that mean like I love that aspect of her Shaw storyline. I do 100% agree. That single line, there's no reason for her to have said that because it doesn't add anything to it. Because ultimately she doesn't want alien baby.
No one wants an alien baby except David.
Imagine she was like, David, that's great news. Let me birth.
I think David would carry that alien baby himself if he could.
Genuinely, yes. Like, so that's what I find interesting. Again, going back to this idea, I don't think he thinks anything that he's doing to Shaw is like genuinely nefarious. Like, maybe he has some understanding, but I also don't think he has any real understanding of morality. Because he's, again, just kind of copying everything that he's seeing around him. And he's like, yeah, People are awful.
Do you see both Prometheus and Covenant as horror films? Do you think they work as horror films? Or more like deeply, darkly philosophical sci-fis with some silly moments?
They're scary to me.
So yes.
Yes, I think because horror ultimately is about exploring what we fear. And even if these movies don't have, the traditional structure and formatting and even tone of a horror movie, they're all about what scares us the most. In terms of what if God hates us? What if someone put something inside of me and I didn't want it there? There's all this psychosexual element of it. That is just really, really primal, right? So completely stuff we don't even talk about, but just subconsciously really deeply embedded inside of our psyche of just being afraid of everything that's happening in these movies.
I'm conscious as we're wrapping up. Is there anything else about either one of these films that you feel like you need to cover that we may not have brought up?
I mean, this can't go on for 4 hours, so I'm aware I have to stop talking at some point. I think the only thing I want to bring up,
yes,
because we've talked so much about Frankenstein,
yes,
I do want to discuss the meaning of him fucking up the poem, because I've thought a lot about this.
Go on. Yes.
Wow. So in the movie, he quotes, oh my god, get it on that. Look upon my works, ye mighty, and despair. And he says it's by Lord Byron, and he's like, oh, sometimes you just, you hear something that's so beautiful you could die. If I could, but I can't because I'm immortal. And so, yeah, he says it is by Byron, and then Walter corrects him and says, no, that's by Shelley. If one note is off, the whole symphony falls apart. And that's, I think, partially, yes, that's meant to reveal kind of David's madness, right? He's so malfunctioning, he doesn't even know his romantic poetry anymore. But I find it so interesting that he makes that specific mistake, because that line that he quotes sounds like, look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. That's what he's thinking when he drops all the goo on the engineers. But in the context of that poem, because it's by Shelley, it's all about how legacy's bullshit and legacy does all legacy fades. It's it's sort of the opposite meaning to what he intends when he quotes it in the film. And that's why I think he thinks it's by Byron, because he's quite a barodic hero, a little old David. He's got the self-mythologizing attitude to it, and he's very, tortured inside.
Well, I think there might be a different option as well, because on the one hand, I kind of see it as the interpretation of David as malfunctioning. His Wikipedia facts are wrong, but I also think it's about this is kind of a demonstration of him being an android and not being a real boy. It's because he can quote, but he can't interpret. He doesn't understand the meaning of that poem. So perhaps the fact that he misattributes it to Byron is a malfunction, but the fact that he doesn't understand the meaning of the poem is his nature, because he's not capable of reading between the lines, of reading what the context is and what Shelley meant with those lines and with that poem. He just sees it on face value. And it's the same way where the things that he does to Shaw, he only conceives them on face value. He doesn't understand the horrors that he's perpetrating and how he's desecrating her. I think that's my read of it. It's the fact that he doesn't get it. He just doesn't get it. And that's why he's never going to be the number one boy.
No, I think that's also, I think that's, I 100% also believe that. I think the fact that it's Byron and Shelley also seems interesting to me. Because the fact that the certain, I think David would love to be a Byronic hero. And that's because he's taking that poem at surface level. He's just reading that line out of context and not thinking about what's around it. He's just picked that quote up and gone, yes, look on my works, ye mighty, and despair.
Well, I think that's also the obsession with Lawrence of Arabia. Man. Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, he doesn't understand the story. He just sees pretty Peter O'Toole and he's like, oh, if I'm blonde like him, if I speak like him, I'll be Lawrence of Arabia too.
He doesn't have media literacy. This is actually a movie about the dangers of media literacy. He would be on Twitter dropping the worst hot takes about weapons you've ever heard in your life. Because he doesn't understand TikTok. It's a metaphor.
He'd be the guy who wrote the Sydney Sweeney ad.
Yes.
He would be so happy with his pun about jeans.
And then someone would tell him, be like, what? I just meant she had great jeans.
It's like, it's a pun. Don't you get it? Don't you get it? And it's like, David, it's a little bit, it's giving white supremacy, David. And he's like, no, it's a pun. It's a pun. David. David, we had a conversation about eugenics. It's bad. Remember that, David.
Oops, sorry.
We know you like Peter O'Toole, but being blonde does not mean that you're a superior being.
It's just something from a film I like. We haven't even gotten into the autistic coding. But it's just something from a film I like. Real. You're watching the same movie over and over again every night. I've been there. That movie is called Prometheus.
This is where we come full circle.
That's my Lawrence of Arabia. Which just makes it surprising I don't have combed over blonde hair, really.
It's just like, you're just going around in circles on your bike, throwing basketballs.
Yeah.
Always perfectly. Always a perfect score.
Always with my little baby alien and the baby going, Papa! In my head, that scene in Alien Covenant where the little baby xenomorph first comes out of Billy Crudup, I insert the dialogue of the xenomorph going, Papa!
You insert the song from Pinocchio in that scene.
My baby! It's in such a horrible... Sorry, I'm still going on. We need to end. I'll just end with that. In such a dark, awful, evil, cynical movie, such a moment of purity of little baby and Papa. And that's why I actually think David is better than Peter Wayland. Because David loved that xenomorph. He was a real dad. He was a real good dad. I would give him best dad in the world mug. For sure. Don't excuse anything else he did. But as a father, he stepped up. Thus concludes my argument. Are you convinced? Do you think it's the greatest movie ever made now? Now that I've made you realize that it's actually about a great dad being a great dad.
Listen, I remain unconvinced about Covenant being the greatest film ever made, but you have convinced me that you are the best film critic in the world. So, it's a win.
/ the most delusional.
Listen, it's giving David, but without the genocide.
Do you want to come to my castle where I've just stocked 300 copies of Alien Covenant?
Do you know what? I had other questions, but they don't matter because you've just awarded David the best dad in the world mug. I think that's a beautiful note to end on. I don't know how to end it now. So this has been brilliant, as always. Thank you so much for bringing your passionate arguments for both Prometheus, but especially Covenant, onto the show. I'm deeply appreciative. Where
You're
can
welcome.
people find more of your work online?
I'm at Clarisse Loughrey on Instagram and Blue Sky. Take a look. Something to see. It's a quote from Alien Covenant. He's getting Billy Crudup to look at the egg. Take a look. Something to see. I quote that a lot.
I've known you for years. Why did I never know about this obsession?
Genuinely because I got bullied for it so badly that I kept it on the down low, and it's only re-emerged last year when it was finally socially acceptable to be like this.
I really hope this conversation has healed the online bullying experience
has.
because of your 5-star love for Covenant.
It genuinely has, thank you.
I'm really pleased. I appreciate your devotion to this film. It's a one-woman fight. But I support you fighting that fight.
Yeah, this is the hill I will die on, and the hill is actually... Oh, do you know this fact? You know the... Sorry, I'm still going.
You will not be stopped!
Do you know that... So sometimes I get confused between maybe that's the neomorph, the thing that comes out of the engineer at the very end of Prometheus.
Yeah.
So his name is Deacon.
Yes, I did know this, because he vaguely resembles a deacon? Like the building structure?
Oh, I actually didn't know that. I just thought they gave him that name. I thought it was like a ladybird situation. He was like, it was a name I gave to myself. Deacon. Because he's not a xenomorph, so he is a bit different. Like, he just kept growing, and he kept growing and growing and growing until he became a mountain. And that's the hill that I'm dying on, is Deacon.
We need to stop that.
Goodbye.